Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Film Seizure. I am Jeff Arbuckle. How's it going, everybody? And welcome to this discussion of Messiah of Evil. With me, as always, I have my co-host Jason Oliver. Jason, how's it going?
Hey, going pretty well.
Are you excited for the waiting? Are you excited for?
I've been staring up at the sky on the beach every day this week.
Perfect. You're doing good. I've eaten some beach rats today, so I'm ready to go for tonight. And also we have Chuck Moore. Chuck, how's it going?
Hey, what's up? I thought you were going to refer to me as the Dark Stranger, but that's okay.
Well, yeah. I mean, no, that's who we're waiting for, and you're already here, so you can't be the you. I mean, would you rather be the Elisha Cook Jr. guy?
Let me finish this bourbon, and maybe I will be.
Oh boy,
that's a pretty hefty pour. Yeah, so I think you will become Elisha Cook Jr.
You can't bury him. You if you love him, you don't bury him. You got to kill him.
Yeah, you got to burn him.
You got to burn him. You got to burn your daddy. Anyway, I really like this movie for a lot of different reasons. I have kind of a long history with this movie. It was a movie that I think it's not one of the movies that I saw for the first time on Bizarre TV. Actually, the first time I saw it was during the very, very early stages of when I created B Movie Enema. And back in October of 2014, when I had just started that blog, it was in one of those 50-pack movie box sets. And I thought, wow, Messiah of Evil, that sounds kind of cool. So I think I'll watch that. And I was like, whoa, I like this movie a lot. It's got a lot going for it. And then later, because it was one of the first reviews that I did then covered it on B Movie Enema, the series, as part of that first season where I wanted to at least pay tribute to those first 6 movies that I covered on the site. And I never did it for Monster Mondays because I knew this day would come that we would cover it here. So I was just kind of biding my time to cover it again. And this was kind of one of those things where it's like, you know what? We're now in the fall. You know, we've got a theme month for October. This movie, I think, has a lot of the atmosphere I like about watching horror movies around the fall. And we just kind of thought maybe this would be a pretty good lead in to our spooky month. So I'll step back and let one of you guys talk before I take over the rest of the episode.
Jason, go ahead.
I'm trying to think the first time I saw this.
Was it on my recommendation?
I think it was on your recommendation, but before you did it for B Movie Enema.
Well, that was the first time I saw it. So it would have been after I wrote about it.
The series, you mean, or the article?
The article.
Series.
Oh, okay.
No. It would have been in between the article because you did it for the series too.
Yes, right. Yeah. You're right. So yeah.
Yeah. So it would have been several years in between there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So based on recommendation, based on when I wrote the article, but before it hit the show.
I will say the first time I watched it, it didn't do much for me.
Ooh.
I did. This is now probably the third time I've seen it, and I liked it a lot more this time around. Maybe it's just it hit me at the right time. Who knows? When the first time I watched it, I might have been distracted. It's definitely a movie that you kind of have to give it your attention just so that you can keep with the tone of it, right?
Yeah.
It's not a good movie to start and stop. Because there is this sort of building dread throughout it. Yeah. That is, I do think is its greatest asset is the tone that it strikes. It does drag a bit here and there. I'm always kind of wondering who the fuck the people are in this movie. I mean, the 3 people who would just show up to town. I feel like there's probably 4 or 5 different versions of the script that they could never figure out with who those people were supposed to be. There's some things that kind of I find frustrating, but on a whole, yeah, this is a pretty stylish movie. It's like it's got that 70s era horror vibe about it. That only a few movies really kind of had. Like Romero nailed it.
This one's often compared to
Toby Hooper nailed it.
Yeah.
And this is another one I think really has that atmosphere that works real well.
Chuck, what do you have to say?
Well, I think the first time I watched this movie was last year, either for when did your B movie Enema episode release? So
That was in the first season. So yeah, that would have been like 2001 or 2021.
So that's when I first saw it, and I think I've seen it each year since, or at least a couple times since then. For the atmosphere, I love it. I think the atmosphere is wonderful of this movie. I think it's got a weird pacing because it starts really heavy and then it's like it just slows down a lot. So I would kind of echo Jason on kind of the dragging part of it, but that's also building
right
for the finale.
And it does build. I think it does effectively build. I think yeah. Go. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's fine. I like this movie. I think it's good. I think it's well done. It does harken back to like gothic stuff I remember watching when I was a kid, which is definitely a plus. And it does remind me of some of the Italian gothic stuff or Spanish gothic stuff I've been watching lately. It feels very much like that.
I was about to ask you how you felt specifically about either Italian or Euro kind of feel that it kind of has.
Yeah, it's got it. It's not as like the bookends to it are oftentimes what an entire like Italian horror film will be like for the whole movie, and there'll be more nude women. It's just a little there's like a bigger jump into it with those, so maybe that's why I felt a little bit like, oh, this is a little slow. But I don't know, it's got a lot of cool stuff and it does a lot of cool things. Like one of my favorite scenes in horror over the last few years is in this movie. So
there are two really good horror scenes, and like I would dare say iconic. Especially when it comes to 70s horror.
Yeah.
I was also going to say that this movie kind of in the vein of it reminds me tonally of like Carnival.
I was glad I was about to say that myself. Yeah, but go ahead.
And Carnival of Souls for sure, and also Daughters of Darkness. It's it's got that kind of like slow burn vibe.
But Daughters of Darkness also has the element that I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about, which is you have these characters that are kind of interlopers into this scenario.
Yes, exactly right.
No, I'm glad you brought up Carnival of Souls because that is one that I've covered on Monster Mondays. I've never written about it on B Movie Enema, and I will certainly probably never cover it on B Movie Enema the series just because that's been hosted to death. It's one of the most famous, more recent, like absolute for sure public domain movies.
Yeah.
So it's covered to death. There's nothing more I can add to it, just like with Night of the Living Dead. There's nothing more I can add to it. But you're right. It does have that and the number one thing about it, which is why I think I like this one and Carnival of Souls so much, is that it does kind of have that very surreal and dreamlike. It plays out like a nightmare, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, because like I think some of the things that there are things that definitely amp that up. Now, pacing to me, I think this movie goes by pretty quickly, at least in my, but I've seen it so many times now that it's like I'm now looking for other things that I maybe didn't notice before. So I'm like my engagement is slightly different with it because I've seen it probably 8 or 9 times now. So it's yeah, it's kind of an interesting movie because when it was originally released, it was, nobody really cared much for it. This was still during a time in which, you know, horror was not well looked at, even though this came out the same year as The Exorcist.
Was it even like, probably wasn't promoted very much. I imagine a lot of people
No,
didn't even know it existed.
no, it was a
I
drive-in
mean,
movie.
yeah,
I mean, it made the drive-in circuit. It probably played regionally. It had a couple of different titles.
yeah.
Um, so it was one of those things where it's like, as far as I understood about it, like, so Gloria Katz and Willard Hike were part of that George Lucas,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Steven Spielberg, and Francis Ford Coppola group.
Yep.
In fact, I think they probably one or both of them, I think, also went to USC.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Hayek went to USC. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's where they met
yeah.
Lucas and Coppola. Yeah.
Well, Gloria Katz and Willard Hike are incredibly important to Star Wars
Mm-hmm.
because they did a rewrite that probably did more to shape it to be what it became than what Lucas did, because Lucas's ideas were a lot like episode 1 and a lot not like what the Star Wars that we got in 77. So they knew how, I mean, like, they are better known as writers than they were anything else, but they had the opportunity to direct a movie. And from what I understand, they were, they didn't have a whole lot of money. And the best thing that you can do when you don't have a whole lot of money is make a horror movie. Now, did they really want to make a horror movie? No. I mean, Gloria Katz went on record later to say that this movie pretty much sucks. But I don't know. I mean, I guess when you compare it to her script of Howard the Duck, I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know
But
that she'd be vigorously defending that one either.
right. But anyway, but I mean, like, I think later she kind of warmed up to it when people really were kind of looking at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, it's a movie that has gained ground every year. I mean, it's probably more popular today than it's ever been, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and it is labeled as a 1973 film. One of the release dates wasn't until late 74. But I mean, we'll just say what it is. It's it's his 50th anniversary. I kind of wanted to stick this one in there, and it was, glad that the timing worked out to lead us into October. But yeah, I mean, and over the course of 50 years, and more people become appreciative of independent horror and try to, I don't know, not necessarily copy, but like try to take a lot of influences from 70s horror. I mean, this is one that crops up, and I mean, it's almost unheard of it not being described as underappreciated or underrated, or it's like that's but I will say it is a strike against you if you say, if you don't like this movie, or you don't like Carnival of Souls, because there's stuff to poke at with this, absolutely, and there's stuff to criticize. But if you're just like, oh, this movie sucks, is because it's not particularly gory or whatever, it's like, that's going to be a strike against you in my book. I don't know. I love this movie.
Willard Hayek, according to Marcia Hayek.
Hike. Just like hiking, like hike.
According to Marcia Lucas.
You just are determined to mispronounce his name.
According to Marcia Lucas.
Lucas.
Marcia.
He came up with the ending to Empire Strikes Back.
Possibly. Yeah.
That's what Marcia Lucas says.
I mean, yeah. I mean, what?
It was kind of a joke. It was kind of a joke to make Vader Luke's father, but supposedly was his idea.
Well, gee.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's like these guys know what they're doing or something.
Pretty interesting.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know that much more about this movie other than they decided, you know what, we can make a movie. They had a little bit going for them from American Graffiti. So they were able to get financing, and they were just like, let's just put a movie together. We want to shoot something. Steven Katz is the cinematographer. I don't know if that's Gloria's relation or not, but Steven Katz ended up doing a lot of other stuff like Blues Brothers and a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, they just put this together, and I have a feeling that you get people like Royal Dano and Elisha Cook Jr. Those were probably people that were easy for them to get, and I suspect that like Mariana Hill and Michael Greer and Anitra Ford and all of them and Joy Bang, who is got maybe one of my favorite lines in this movie. They were probably like hired out of a casting, call or something like that. But yeah, I mean, there is very, very few people in this. If they're not a speaking part, they're just people probably in the town of Pointe Dume. And, they just were put into the movie.
Boy, is Michael Greer playing against type in this.
Absolutely. I was going to talk about that. Yeah, Michael Greer is actually like even at the time was one of the most famous outwardly gay actors and had done the Gay Deceivers for a long time on stage. He had like a one man, almost kind of like a stand-up act.
Serious question, was the Gay Deceivers, was that kind of sort of the inspiration for Three's Company? Because it's sort of an inverse.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know that was that the one that that Sal Mineo had something to do with? Or no, Fortune in Men's Eyes was the one I think he had something to do with. Anyway. But yeah, no, he is absolutely playing against type because that guy is picking up women left and right in this movie.
Yeah, he sure is.
And doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, he's like
Perry.
The Mac Dandy.
Mac Dandy.
It's never really established what the fuck they are.
Yeah, so there are some reads on that, but go ahead. We can get around to it. We'll come around to that.
I have a read that I wish I liked, but doesn't work.
Okay.
That he is the Dark Stranger, and I have a theory that it was probably at some point in time written that way, but it got rewritten or got written to the point of ambiguity, or things got cut and it just didn't work anymore.
I'll add to that.
Or they couldn't afford to shoot some other scenes, so they went a different way. But I think he was supposed to be the Dark Stranger. What were you going to add?
I was going to say I'll add to that. I'm pretty sure it's him walking off the beach as the Dark Stranger. It looks exactly like him when they show the back. In time.
In the flashback, it is him. Yeah, it's him.
So yeah, I mean, your theory makes sense, just given that it's the same actor walking.
But it does. But yeah, but my point is, it doesn't make any fucking sense. And the way that the story unfolds, it doesn't really make sense.
No,
unless he's like completely ignorant of the fact. But I do believe, yes, that at some point in time that probably was the plan, and it for whatever reason got all effed up.
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. Now, obviously, casting him in the dual role was saved from scratch. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, regardless if that was the plan or not, it was probably how can we make sure that we have an extra character that
I mean, it creates some ambiguity.
You might also have a problem of an unreliable narrator too. What she tells us happens at the end of the movie may not be
That's
how
fair.
it really happened.
That's
That's fair.
true. That's true because she's kind of going through she's going through the transformation too. And of
Right.
course what her father leaves behind is it could be unreliable in some regards too because he can't put to words what's going on with
Did
him.
Tom have any symptoms?
No.
His
He
ear
never had any
was
symptoms.
looking bleedy when
But
he was
that was-
laying in the bed.
Yeah, but that was
It wasn't the same drip from the eye though.
No, he was he never showed any of the actual signs. I mean, Tom, Laura, and Tony were victims. I think they were just to be eaten.
I mean, not Tom. Tony, Laura, and
Tom, Michael Greer, he didn't show any signs of changing.
Oh, but you were saying that he meant to be just a victim?
Right. I mean, I think that
Just to be
because
eaten,
they were the
not changed.
interlopers, they would be the ones
right,
that
right,
were.
right.
They,
But we don't see him. We don't see him die either.
No, we don't.
But he's been around as long as anybody, and he doesn't change.
Right.
So that's why I think that there's something play.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've got. I mean, you're not wrong in that read. I don't think. But yeah, the way it plays out, that's not really. Of course, there could be a couple
but
of
then
other
he just
cuts
vanishes. He just vanishes at the end, right? Not to jump all the way to the end.
I always thought that he was just pulled under by the undertow. Because Arletty even says that she was hoping for her final escape. She was hoping to die, and that the people of the town prevented that. So I think she was looking to be pulled under too.
Which that didn't make any sense either to me. But
well, she's being
let's talk about the end at the end.
Yeah. She's playing a role from 100 years before, in this in the grand scheme of things. But we'll get to that. Yeah, I mean, this is just it's like, it's. There's a lot of striking imagery to this movie, right? Like, people bleeding from their eyes. That's kind of a visceral feeling. It's like there's something there about that. But then there's like the inside of Joseph Lang's house is insane.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine trying to sleep in that room and then like kind of wake up in the middle of the night and see like what you think is probably a person standing there, but it's just a fucking painting?
We don't even have to imagine it because
they do it. Yeah. I mean, yeah. But like, I mean, every room of that house is also in a different style of art and different, like portraying something different. So it's very, very, it's very much like a dream. You walk through a door and you're someplace else, or it doesn't make any kind of sense in terms of like where you are, or it doesn't give you anything to hold on to on like a conscious level.
There are some crazy beds.
Oh, I love the one that swings, like that's just hanging in the middle of the room.
The single, and then the main bed. I mean, holy crap! That's like not even a California king size. It's like emperor size bed.
Yeah, like that. That looks like, and it looks like it's like like that room is all Greek influenced. So it's like it's almost like it. You know what it kind of reminded me of? It reminded me of the like the painting of the woman in the shell that's standing in the. You know what I'm talking about?
You're talking about Venus?
Yeah, I guess that's Venus. Is that Venus?
That's Venus. That's the Venus de Milo, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, Venus de Milo is Venus no arms statue.
But okay, that's fair. But it's still pretty sure the shell lady is Venus.
Venus, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what it kind of reminded me of.
It's the birth of Venus.
Okay. But yeah, it's like that. Like, because when she goes into that room, and there's even a weird edit in that room too, where she goes in and she sees Tom and Tony in there, and they seem to both be asleep, and then it like immediately cuts back to him, and he's sitting up, and it's like that's almost nightmarish too. Like, there's a lot going on in this movie that unsettles me, and I don't know. I think it's why I like this movie so much. But I do want to point out something at the very beginning, because you guys know who the
I
stabbing
know
victim.
what you're going to point out is
yeah, it's Walter Hill.
Yeah. Who we're going to talk a little bit about next week.
Yeah.
We sure are, aren't we?
We've already talked about him. We've already talked about him before.
We have. We've covered
Streets of Fire.
One of his movies, Streets of Fire. Yep.
I don't like that movie, but I like others of his movies. Other movies of his. But yeah, he gets killed. Now, the reason why I said there's probably different cuts of this movie is I know there's different cuts of this movie, because there's a version of this movie that opens with a really, really out of place love song.
That's weird.
Yeah, it depends on how you see it.
Message to the wind.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
But yeah, it is a very weird opening, because that opening is more of a short film. It has nothing to do with this movie. And in fact, I think it actually was made like a year or two before the rest of the movie was made. I could be wrong on that, but the beginning of that was, I think it was a short that Katz and Hike were putting together initially, and then they just, okay, well, we'll get the money, and I think they probably used it to help get money. But it doesn't really tell you what's coming in the movie, other than not to trust everybody that you see or come in contact with. Do you guys get a little bit, because I was thinking about this the last time I saw it, do you guys get a little bit of a feel of Halloween 3 in this also?
Yeah, a little bit. Kind of the abandoned town.
Yeah.
Yeah, the desolate, like it doesn't seem like there's really anybody that lives here kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the entire town is working towards the one goal, or the one thing. Yeah, although there is some, like the guy, obviously the guy who runs the gas station, much like with Halloween 3, he's seen some shit. It's like, he's not unused to seeing weirdos come and go.
Well, he's not unused to seeing dead bodies in the back of a pickup truck, apparently.
Yeah, he does not react to that the way I would.
His only reaction is to the lady, like, get out of here.
Get the fuck out of here, yeah.
Move it. There's a crazy albino man who is scary, who eats rats.
Whole. Eats them practically whole, yeah.
Bites their heads off.
Bites their heads off and then eats the whole rest of it. Like, yeah. Yeah, and so I get a little bit, because that even like the movie even starts like Halloween 3. You're at a gas station. It just doesn't end there.
But it does kind of end with that type of threat.
Oh yeah,
the same way Halloween 3 ends.
Yeah, this thing did not end. It's yeah. Yeah, but
there's an apocalyptic thing at work. Yeah.
And then so this is where we meet our Letty, who's Mariana Hill. She was in a lot of TV shows, but most notably Star Trek, in a pretty good first season episode called Dagger of the Mind. She goes, her and Kirk are checking out like this mental facility, and they have like this thing that's supposed to like beam new thoughts into like the crazy people's brains, and she implants a thought of her and Kirk like hooking up after a holiday party or something somewhere. Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
All right, here's a crazy tidbit for you of info. Mariana Hill's cousin is General Stormin Norman Schwarzkopf.
That's kind of awesome. She was
born Mariana Schwarzkopf.
I can see why she changed her name.
Yeah.
She lives in England now. She's not much of a she's not a recluse, but she just lives a private life and does like private acting lessons and stuff. So she was actually supposed to go to a Star Trek convention, but it got canceled, and there's been no word if she's gonna ever make that up or not. But it got canceled because of COVID. But it was like Germany.
She was in Medium Cool. That's a pretty landmark film in the new Hollywood movement.
Yeah, I would say
written
that
and directed by Haskell Wexler, the famous cinematographer.
Huh.
Yep.
But no, she's looking for her father, Joseph. Now, Joseph Lang is a famous artist who lives in Pointe Dume, or at least has a house there. And she goes, she hadn't heard from him for a while. And I think she even got a letter basically saying, basically it's like, yeah, don't come here. He's consistently trying to warn her off, but she won't listen. And when she gets to his place, that's when you get the first look at his crazy ass like murals all over the wall, people painted onto the wall. It almost looks like a little nuclear bomb went off in there, and they're like their shadows are like stuck to the wall, But she she ends up going into town where she talks to this weird art dealer. And the art dealer, I mean, this gives me a little bit of Phantasm vibes too, because like the art dealer is blind and never speaks.
Yeah.
And like she communicates to the other guy at the art dealer gallery by tapping on his hand. And so that's already a little weird. And of course he then comes with some attitude. Chuck, you're on mute.
Oh, the fact that she's a blind art dealer is weird.
Right.
Like, how does she assess the art that she's dealing? Like,
right, exactly. Right. And then, but she's got her assistant who's an uppity, like he's kind of, it's like when she's asking about her dad, and he's like, yeah, we know who he is. We may seem like bumpkins or whatever. It's like, but we've
get
heard
magazines here, and some of us can read. It's like, whoa, you're coming on strong.
Now maybe he's had to deal with Tom, and maybe more accurately Tony.
Not maybe, he definitely dealt with them.
He definitely dealt with them, so maybe that's where his attitude is coming from. But I kind of also feel like the movie kind of comes off like it's written like a book, right? Because like there's narration that feels
way too verbose with the narration.
Some of it is, yeah, and it's like it and that's where I even get like a little bit of vibe of like like how Dracula reads. You have like you hear different people's perspectives on some things. Because like even when she does then go to the hotel where Tom and Tony and Laura are, and they're talking to Charlie, the town drunk, who again makes me think of the town drunk in Halloween 3, who knows the information, but he has to be careful about how he talks about it, and then he gets offed because he talks about it, or you think he's off because he's said too much, when in fact he's just off because the people in town are getting hungry.
Why are they interviewing him?
So there is dialogue that leads to Tom being a bored aristocrat who wants to he wants to go from place to place and hear people's stories. And he's like a collector of legends, because he even talks about being a collector.
That's what he says, but it doesn't really ring very true.
Well, I think the bored aristocrat does.
Maybe.
Because like I think he is, because like that's one thing that there's dialogue made about Joseph that makes it sound like that Joseph is a little bit of a bohemian, in the sense that like, because Arletty even brings up the fact that my dad once said once the revolution was done, how we would basically spend the rest of our time. So like there is something about that puts him kind of on the level of Tom, and I think maybe Tom was looking for him and is just now kind of wrapped up in like these legend or these stories that are being told either about him or about this town. And because I think they were there ahead of Arletty, and I think they know something's weird about the town. And I think that's where Tom's interests are getting. And in a way, he is also being he's being very exploitative of Charlie. He's like, I'll give you the wine if you tell us these stories, basically. And I think that was just an accidental thing that Arletty, and it's just a way to convey to Arletty, it's like, hey, there's something weird in this town.
I think Tom's story doesn't jive well because Tony and Laura aren't aware of what he's doing. He's trying to make them feel like arriving in this town is an accident. He was lost, and they start to get wise to the fact that he wasn't lost. So the things he says to other people in their presence are inaccurate because he doesn't want them to know what he's truly doing. The problem is we also don't know what he's truly doing.
Well, I think that if we go back to making him the Dark Stranger, then you could say he's pulled there, but he doesn't know why.
Yeah, because it's been 100 years, he'd be arriving at the right time.
Right. Which would also I mean, it would play to him saying that there was an accident that he's there, but the two girls one is very bored of him or of what's going on being in this small town. The other one is just like, I'm kind of done with your games. I'm gonna go to Ralph's and pick up some sandwich meat or something. And then she becomes sandwich meat.
She does become a cold cut.
Yep. Yeah, because like right away, Laura is very standoffish in a way because like she's, she was apparently probably with Tom. I mean, she was certainly with Tom longer than Tony, but she's also, she doesn't want Arletty involved in this group. And the more Tom gets closer to Arletty, the quicker Laura leaves.
It all just plays as like cattiness, though.
A little bit.
Like this is those three characters. Just that's where what I have trouble in this movie with is like them.
Well, I think
it's just not very well written.
I think that like I think Laura can deal with Tony because Tony is kind of played younger or at least more naive. So she has some superiority over her because she's a little more worldly. But Arletty is also older and more experienced. And I think maybe that's why there's an instant cattiness between them.
I just wish that we had a little bit more backstory on Tom because there is something about Tom that plays into that Messiah of Evil persona, right?
Well, yeah, because he is a little hedonistic.
Right, he's hedonistic. He's almost like a budding cult leader, right? He's traveling with his growing harem of women.
Right, yeah.
So to me, like again, I think that a lot of those characteristics fit the narrative that he is the Messiah of Evil, the Dark Stranger, but it's just his reactions to all of it. None of it fits, and I wish there were some other things that happened that maybe were ambiguous to the point of like one of the zombie people maybe recognizing something in him and maybe not like biting him or something. Like I wish they just played with the idea a little bit more. But I'm glad Chuck's back because I wanted to mention that Joy Bang, you're 100% right, is like could have been Frances McDormand's mom.
Oh my God, it's kind of uncanny. At first I was like,
it's really weird.
At first I was like Jane Fonda, a little bit, and I was like,
Yeah, a little
no,
bit. Yeah.
there's a little bit Jane Fonda, but then there's one scene where you get kind of profile, and I'm like, oh my god, it's fucking Frances McDormand
And she even
at like
sounds like her.
17 years. Yeah, and
Yeah.
her even her, I don't know if it's an overbite, underbite, whatever it is.
Uh-huh.
Like, even the way her mouth closes looks like her. I don't know how to explain
Well, legit,
that.
when you put that in the chat, I was like, oh my god, is that really her mom? Because it's like, it has to be. I looked it up. I was like, wait a minute, she's not related to her at all. But damn, like they have the same gene pool somewhere.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
pretty weird, really weird. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, now that you're back, is that this is like the second movie in what, like 6 weeks or so, that has prominently featured a Ralph's grocery store.
Yeah. That's kind of wild if you think about it.
It is kind of wild. I mean, I don't think there's too many of those.
I mean, they're all on the West Coast. Oddly, I think they're owned.
I mean,
or
too many
owned.
of those in a movie. I mean,
Oh
yes.
yeah, true. I think they're owned or own Kroger too, which is interesting. It's either Vaughn's or
if
Ralph's.
a Meyer were prominently
Yeah.
featured in a movie in the Midwest. You know.
Yeah.
It's pretty weird.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, some of the so let's talk about what I think are two stellar scenes in this movie. The one deals with Ralph's.
Yep.
Basically, so yeah, like at this point Laura's like, you know what? I'm kind of done with Tom. He doesn't really know what he's doing. He's kind of playing with people. Tony, someday you're going to understand this too, and you're going to get out of there. And she decides to leave, and she hitches a ride with the albino guy.
Oh boy, yeah.
And everybody in the back of the truck is just staring up in the sky, just straight up. And he's, she
kind of has like a Body Snatchers vibe, right? Like
a little bit,
70s Body Snatcher, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. And so he's like, yeah, were you there at the waiting? And she's like, no. It's like, do you like Wagner? And she's like, yeah, wow, it's great. It's like, I like to eat rats, and he like starts eating rats right in front of her. She's like, you know what? You can just leave me right here, And but then she eventually goes to Ralph's. And one thing I want to real quick say, seeing that empty parking lot made me think of like how Sundays used to be. Sundays were always like Sunday
at the Chick-fil-A.
No, at just in general, like everything.
I was joking. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't go to Chick-fil-A.
Closed. They're closed on Sundays.
Yeah, they gotta pray for more chickens. No, like I used to hate Sunday evenings because of how quiet and empty everything was. And so I don't know if that's like maybe like triggering that, like when I was a kid and I was like, oh, Sundays, like I gotta go back to school tomorrow and I can't go anywhere now. I can't do, and it's like that Sunday dread that I used to always get, like back when I was in school.
Scaries.
The Sunday scaries, yeah. But I think of that every time I see the start of this scene. Yeah, she's kind of walking across but the store is not closed.
Yeah, so it's what I love about it is how I love that shot of the whole parking lot and the whole building face.
Her chasing the woman in, and then
and then the glow of that building.
Yeah,
it's very very.
Well, it's like it's attracting the fly to the
right.
Or it's attracting the moth to the light.
Yes, most definitely. It seems inviting, but it also seems wrong, right? Because there's nobody there,
right?
And it also reminded me like grocery stores used to be like that, where they had all window fronts to them, and they just kind of that went out of favor, probably for temperature control or whatever, but.
And they would always have the soap markers that would like put the specials on the windows,
or the newspaper ads in the windows. Yep. But yeah,
you can still walk into a Target and see the weekly ad, on the inside before you go all the way in. But yeah, you're right.
Some of the old Krogers still, have that kind of.
Well, the last one that I can,
but
the last thing I remember were the marshes with the big arch window. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, she goes in and like she can't find anybody. It's like the place is open, but there's no cars in the parking lot. There's nobody greeting her as she walks in. And then she sees everybody and they're all eating raw meat. And one of them sees her and they start chasing her. And somebody has done a good job of going in behind her and locking the doors.
Well, we don't know if that door was ever open. She didn't try to go out the door she came in.
Well, that's true.
To be fair.
And those old automatic doors, you had to step on the thing there wouldn't have been one for the other door. You know what I mean? That's why she like stomps at the door, like, when she gets it, because it's like she's trying to trigger it. But yeah. Still.
Yeah, so the people are doing what Charlie described earlier when he said even the kids were eating raw meat. Like they're in there eating raw meat, and then they chase her to the front door, to which she cannot get out. And like we said earlier, they treat her like a cold cut.
Yep. And they eat her up. That is Anitra Ford. She was one of the original Barker's Beauties on Price is Right. She was also
rest in peace, Bob.
Yeah, that's recent news as we were recording this. The Bob Barker passed away at the age of 99, but she was one of the original Barker's Beauties at that time, and she was like the main bad guy in Invasion of the Bee Girls as well. She is exceptionally sexy. She also played the villain in the original pilot movie for the Wonder Woman series before they cast Linda Carter as Wonder Woman. It was Kathy Lee Crosby, and she played a villain in that TV movie. She didn't have a very long career in Hollywood, but that's she has one of two pretty good horror scenes of the 70s. So then, like, nobody really knows she just leaves. I mean, that's all they know about her. She just left. And later, she, Tom and Arletty are kind of getting a little bit deeper into what's going on. And there's been a report that Arletty's dad was found, but she knows it's kind of a setup to get, like, they're lying to her about something because one of the structures that he built on the beach seems to have collapsed on him. But when she touched the body's hand, it didn't feel like her dad's hand because it was callous and it was not the hands of an artist. And so she, she and Tom are kind of getting a little deeper. And so to kind of do away with Tony, who earlier did have the best line of the movie when she says, "Yuck, this stuff tastes shitty," when she was eating something.
Artichoke. They were eating
artichoke. That's what it was. Yuck, this tastes shitty. They say, why don't you go see a show? Go see a movie. And she's like, "Yeah, I get to take the car," which I think is actually kind of important because they can't leave. And when they have no car to get out of town once she goes to the movie. But she does go see a real movie.
Well, I'm pretty sure there's another car, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tom has a car, and so does
Arletty. Yeah, Arletty did have, but she never did get any gas, so she may not have any gas to leave.
No, she got gas. She got it for free.
Oh, that is right. That is right. He's like, "Yeah, get out of here. Don't worry about paying." Yeah, that's right. You're right. Just don't go to Pointe Dume.
That done. I mean,
anyway, it doesn't really matter. But she goes and sees a movie, and they start playing a trailer for a real movie, a Western. And it always cracks me up, the scene with Sammy Davis Jr., where the guy's like, "You can't take all of us," and he's like, "Wrong," and he just shoots everybody.
Yep.
That cracks me up, the way that's edited together. But the best thing about this movie is before the trailer started and before the lights went down, she notices the person sitting in the front, because it's kind of like sparsely, people are kind of just sitting wherever, and he's looking back at her, So she's like, that's weird. And then as the trailers are playing for the movie, more and more people are starting to file into the theater. And it gets to the point where they are all looking at her.
What's just awesome. This was the scene I was talking about earlier. So
Yep.
she's well lit, right?
Yep.
And they're all like, they all look like the people in the paintings.
Yep.
And they just are surrounding her, basically. It's super effective and creepy and weird that it's being cut with the Western and two girls fighting and like all the stuff that's going on. Like, it's almost like they're like, we need to take some of the dread out of this.
Yeah.
Which is strange. It is still very like effective. But yeah, that that's my favorite scene in the movie by a lot.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's a great scene.
Yeah.
And so then and eventually she gets wise that, you know, this isn't good. So she tries to run away and she runs right into another. And basically at that point, she too becomes a subway sub for somebody.
Subway sub. She's the sub club.
Yep. So yeah, and basically, yeah. So the Messiah of evil. This is one other thing that should be pointed out. Charlie does mention that he was a Donner Party survivor. So
to which Steph said, "Oh yeah, blame this whole thing on the Donner Party."
Right, but it ties in the whole cannibalism part.
Right.
I don't especially find them to necessarily be. I mean, they act like zombies and they act like vampires, but I see them more as just being possessed or they're cursed almost, if that makes sense.
It seems to me almost like an infection, a brain infection, and I don't know how you get it. But.
Yeah, it almost seems like, which may explain why she starts changing too, because she starts throwing up bugs and stuff. Yeah. And she stops bleeding. She doesn't feel pain. Because she's sticking a needle in her arm and nothing's happening.
Well, she put her hand on a fucking burner and didn't feel it.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead, Jason. Oh, I thought you started to say something. My bad.
No. So so it's like, it could be a thing where it's like, if you are native to that town, then you become affected by it, because like the same thing happened at the same place 100 years before, right? So it's like 100-year cycle. And if you're
I don't
from
even
that
think you
town,
need to be a native, because Arletty's not. You just have to be there.
Yeah, but
how would that explain Arletty at all?
Well, but I mean, the only reason why I was thinking that was that maybe her dad was from there or something. Even if that's why maybe he moved back there, but that would explain. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of where it's like Tom, Tony, and Laura don't change.
I don't know. I'm still thinking Tom with the bloody ear. He was starting to change, and the other two girls just didn't have time because they died.
I mean, I'm inclined to agree with that as well. Yeah, they just didn't have time.
But everybody else bleeds from the eye.
I mean, why did he have a bloody ear? Nothing happened to his ear.
Well, he did get attacked before, when the cops showed up and the cops turned on each other. He was attacked at that point.
I like that scene a lot.
Yeah, that's pretty good too.
Yeah,
because you think, oh, hey, there might be.
There are still some people in this town,
right?
It honestly, it makes you kind of feel like less of a crazy person watching this movie when that scene happens, because there are normal people in this town, and they are realizing shit is going wrong, and they're trying to stop it.
Well,
so I kind of love that idea of this whole thing happening, that our main characters are completely unaware of, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And in like the grocery store, right? It's like half of it is because people are eating people, and the other half of it is because people are eating people, right? Yeah. And I don't want to go there. Like, half of this town is just staying away from everything.
Well, the young girl that Tom tries to help until she bleeds from the eye, he said, she's like, well, they were coming for us and they were trying to get it, and my grandma got weird, or whatever, but then she changed. But yeah, he gets attacked in the street there. That's why he comes back to Arletty, or her dad's place, because
I mean, I know that, but I'm not convinced that he wasn't changing too.
well, I mean, I think it would be more likely that he was the Messiah of evil,
Probably
at that point.
But they definitely don't draw that conclusion. So
no, and that, again, that could be lost in a rewrite, or it could have been lost in budget, who knows. But yeah, I mean, no, I think that there is definitely a connection to be drawn there, but I also think that there's a connection because the other cop never changed either. The one cop did, but the other one, well, then again, he was quickly.
I mean, you don't know enough to make any kind of assumption on whether it was townspeople or non-townspeople, especially since we don't know where Arletty is from.
Yeah.
And she definitely changes. So I'm inclined to think it's not a town thing at all.
It's and I also don't
there.
Yeah. And I also don't think the change is permanent, because I don't think she's still a ghoul when she's in the insane asylum.
She never becomes a ghoul in the movie.
Well, but she
was on her way.
She was on her way.
She's like sticking needles in herself.
But she gets away from the town.
Yeah. Well, she's sent back to, the Messiah sends her back.
Right.
He does the same thing to her that he did the person that he encountered before, as kind of almost like toying with it. It's like, I'll send you back to send the warnings, but there's nothing anybody can do to stop me except, maybe gain more followers or something. Like like the Messiah purposely sends her back knowing that they're not going to believe her.
Yeah, I mean, but that doesn't change the fact that she's gone and was never completely a ghoul in the first place. Yeah, that's all I was saying.
One other thing that is a reading on this, or one of the analysis of this, is that all of the people who change are all mostly seen as straight-laced people. A lot of the ghouls are older, and the people that they specifically tend to attack are younger, younger generation people with longer hair, not the same buttoned up style. The more the hedonistic trio is, they all get attacked in one way or another.
I mean, you can say that, but the kids were eating people too.
Well, but they were also, but the kids were also dressed very
well. We don't see the kids from 100 years earlier.
Well, no, but I mean, I'm saying that the young girl that Tom sees in the, who's like, oh, help me or whatever, and then she changes. She's dressed, like almost like, I don't know if I wouldn't say Sunday's, finest, but she's not dressed in as modern or hip as the other people who are so like most of the attacks are happening to a different type of person, which is I mean that's a social element that was kind of just either read into or was baked in from these kind of outsiders of of the system's plans to make this movie. But yeah, I mean, that was just one of the analyses. And of course there's an H.P. Lovecraft element to this, because there is this kind of otherworldly, kind of almost eternal thing that's driving all of this, and the Dark Stranger, of course, being the herald
of eternity from last week.
Possibly. I mean, I wonder what the Germans would call this movie. But
they wouldn't pronounce it Wagner, that's for sure.
No, they sure wouldn't.
That cracked me up.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this is definitely, it does follow that same kind of nightmare illogic that, like, Jason, you said the Carnival of Souls, it has a lot of that going for it too, because like if you really kind of dig into Carnival of Souls, it doesn't like, but there is something very important at the end that explains why Carnival of Souls works the way it does. But this one, while it does kind of miss that, man, I gotta say, the atmosphere of it, the kind of building dread, like, and all the times, like, for example, like inside that beach house of her dad's, it's like it's got that, like, there's wind that blows in, but the doors are shut and the windows are closed. It's like there's always wind in there, and there's always kind of a howling wind element to it that always kind of puts me in that kind of fall mood.
It's a castle-y feel almost.
Yeah. I mean, it is a little gothic, right? I mean, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's gothic in a very, of its time look too, where it becomes very, I mean, there, like I said, there's like a little bohemian feel to Arletty's dad.
Arletty's dad, I thought, is interesting because his diary is describing what he thinks and how he feels, right?
Yeah.
But his walls are describing what he sees.
Yeah.
Like he's taking a historical account almost, and it's like it feels agoraphobic. Like he's painting what he's seen because he knows he can't go outside again. So he's brought the town into him. Is the way I see it, and that just creeps me, eaves me out.
Yeah, I mean, everything about that room where he's got the, like, those shadow people almost, right? Like, because they're painted in what do they call it? Well, it's not a negative. What's that, like?
Transposed?
No, it's negative space, maybe, where it's like where there's, you see the dark spots, but you don't see the, like, there's no other color. So like he paints the suits, but there's nothing that all connects everything together, but the patches of black that he uses. Right. So it's almost like a negative space type of thing. But it is. It's eerie. It's like that place is haunted, in itself. So, but it's there's always wind blowing in when it doesn't seem as though that there's anything open. There's the gathering, like, silhouettes at the window on the, and they start, like, when they finally break through that.
I mean, those are people, right?
Right. Well, yeah, but I mean, but like those start to gather too, right? So it's like, it's, in a way, it's kind of like the movie theater. It starts with just one, and then when they break through, it's like they're just like yeeting themselves into the fucking living room. They don't fucking care. It's like, we're gonna get there somehow. We're gonna get that meat and eat that meat.
Yeah,
eat that meat.
Get that meat.
Gotta eat that meat.
But no, I do like this movie a lot. I think it's one that can be really looked at and kind of studied and picked apart and, and rearranged or try to, fill it. Go ahead, Chuck.
No, I wasn't going to say much, but I just mentioned this, like Arletty's father's diary and his documentation of what's happening on the walls of his house. There's a lot of words in this movie, but not a lot of answers, which is okay. But if you're going to give that much, like, exposition, like, constantly, I wish we knew a little bit more about, like, oh, there's a dark stranger, right? Is it the devil? Is it even somebody guessing at it would have been cool. Or the movie might have been able to stand on two legs without all those diary entries, like, being interspersed in the story.
Yeah, I think maybe some of that might have just been, again, it's like we don't have the money for a lot of scenes. Whereas, like, instead, like a regular movie made on a regular budget probably would have had, like, oh, my father says, here, read, like, let me read this part to you. And,
Right.
and then that would have been the scene instead of it being longer shots that were left over from other shots or what, of the voiceover playing.
I mean, this movie feels 90 minutes, though. Like, I'm not saying that as a criticism necessarily, but I don't think much longer would have done it any good.
No, I mean, there is a completeness to it, even though, it's like I see this as a complete movie. Like, yes, it does use weird logic. It does use more atmosphere than actual, like, complete and total backstory and plot and everything.
Right.
If you look at it from, like, if you try to follow through the movie through Arletty's or Tom's perspective, you're not going to have a full picture either. You're only going to have what the book is and what you're told and and
I
what's
guess, but
happening.
even Arletty carries out almost everything her father says in his diary.
Sure. Because, like, she's starting to feel different. So it's like, maybe
she's poking herself with a needle and doing all that stuff. So I'm not trying to be argumentative.
No.
But I do think I wish there was more context that wasn't shown.
Yeah.
In the notes to give us a little bit more of the nuance there.
I think that what I do find, and I kind of meant to say this last week when we talked about The Wraith, but I think I can say it here too, because I think both The Wraith and Messiah of Evil are two movies that are the types of movies that you should do a remake of. If you're going to remake anything, pick movies like this where there are oddities to it, like with The Wraith, where it's like, why is it a car? Why is it where does this thing come from? Or why is it two different looking people or whatever, and you can tweak some of those things and perfect some of those things with, like, a fresh coat of paint or whatever. And this is very similar too. You could very easily have this movie be remade with with another 95-minute version of the movie or whatever that helps fill in some of those gaps.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. And I don't know if I'm fully with you on remaking because you don't have the full information of what the original intent was. My problem with The Wraith, and less of a problem here, but I think it still exists, is like, I don't need answers, right? I don't need someone to tell me, this is what I was thinking, this is why I did this is what you should infer from this, whatever. But when I feel like even the person who's creating doesn't know what they're trying to convey is a problem.
Well, I mean,
I feel that a little bit in both of these movies. Like,
I think with The Wraith, it's like they knew exactly what kind of movie
I mean that is a bad example.
With Messiah of Evil, there is a lofty ambition to this movie that is let down by its script. In my opinion, I think that it is mostly style over substance.
Agree.
But the style is really good.
Agree.
Like, really good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
that's where the strength of the movie is, right? It's the style and the atmosphere.
Yeah. Like it accomplishes a lot of dread and tone, stuff that's not easy to do, quite frankly. That can get, like, really overbearing in a lot of movies. But yeah, I just feel like its ambiguity does not feel intentional.
Right.
It feels like plot holes that they didn't know how to fix.
Like Lost. It's like Lost. That's the best description I can come up with.
It's like they painted themselves into a corner somewhere, and they
with a beautiful mystery that you'd like to at least know they meant to build, kind of, if that makes sense. And that doesn't take away from my enjoyment, Jeff. I don't want you to feel
no. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. And what I mean by like a remake is, like, everybody says, why do you remake the stuff that's already popular or like the already, like
Right.
Why remake RoboCop when you the original one is still
I
has
agree,
things to say.
I agree with you for that matter, Jeff. I do.
Yeah.
I was thinking before you said it that in the right hands, this could make a really wonderful movie remake. I really could.
And
Like,
it could be. I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be called Messiah of Evil. It could, it's like they
I
could
think it's a
change.
great title. Keep it.
It is a good title, but you can say it's like we're basing this on Messiah of Evil, and
if you're really
we're putting it
reinterpreting this,
you're putting a fresh coat on it that might fill in some of the gaps there.
these days it would be a fucking requel, right? And you'd have Messiah of Evil, whatever. Like
I don't think you do. I don't think you even acknowledge this movie. I think you just make your own version of it.
I agree with that. I'm just talking about the state of Hollywood right now. Someone would try to incorporate it's been 100 years since the last time this happened or some bullshit, right? And retell this story.
Oh man,
it has though. I mean, that is part of the story. I'm just saying, like, the last time doesn't have to be the time we saw in the first movie.
Well, no, I don't know.
Agree, that's the classic like requel.
Although I agree, I'm saying I think they would do it that way. Is what I'm trying to say.
I would hope.
Well, but how would they do it unless it's set in 2073 in space? Which then sign me up.
Well, you think this movie took place in 2073 anyway? Because you called it. I was joking. That was last week. The Wraith.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the Wraith is. Yeah. I mean, the Wraith can be set whenever.
If you weren't canceled, I would say that this would be a perfect property for Richard Stanley.
Oh yeah, totally. I feel like, and maybe you guys will disagree with me, this almost feels like a story in an anthology that, like, at an hour pace would be perfect.
Potentially. I mean, you could, like, imagine taking some of those, like, lesser known movies like this one, or hell, I mean, throw in Carnival of Souls too, or maybe some other movies that were made, in between the early 60s and the late 70s, that were kind of those low budget or regional type of movies for like drive-ins and stuff
that tried to get to 90 minutes that didn't need to be there,
right? And so, like, you could create an entire series from remakes of those things, right? Like,
that would be interesting.
Yeah,
actually. Yeah,
I mean, we were talking about those remakes made in the 90s from that Deborah Hill produced that had the from the 50s exploitation movies.
Were those actual remakes?
Yes.
I didn't catch that. I thought I was kind of listening on that conversation. I thought they were just stories, but
no, they were remakes. Yeah, it was a series of remakes for Showtime. So yeah, I mean, like, you could potentially do something that way, right? But yeah, I mean, like, it's like, I don't necessarily disagree with you, Chuck, that it's like the state of way remakes are made. You have the things like requels, but really, honestly, I think those really only fit for like the popular IPs.
More modern stuff.
Yeah, and it's like, it's like that's why Scream went that way, because it's like, well, we got a built-in audience. We can do, we can do this. Right. Ghostbusters would be something else that would be like that, right? And like all those established IPs, I think anything that's not an established IP that has a built-in fan audience would probably just be a straight remake, or something, and or reimagining would be another way of going about it. But
random question, because this is in the public domain.
I have a quick clarification.
Go ahead, Jason.
A quick correction. The Rebel Highway series on Showtime took original film titles from the 50s, but they were original new films.
Okay.
So they took a title and applied it to a new film. Yeah. Anyway, what was your question, Chuck?
I don't even remember now. I'm sorry. I don't remember. But that's a good clarification there. I think it actually was jumping off that. So since you clarified that, we're good.
Yep. Which that also happens sometimes with remakes too, right? I mean, like, they just take the title and just that's where you get that reimagining,
Yeah.
You know who would have killed this movie at its peak? It was John Carpenter.
Oh yeah, I mean,
It's even got a little synth in it that he could have fucking rocked.
In some ways, this is kind of like The Fog, right?
Yeah, it's got some fog. It's got a little bit of that movie we're going to cover next month, Dead and Buried.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of that
cursed
town gone bad.
But this movie, I don't know. Does anyone have anything else to say about this?
I would say 4 stars. Jeff Bob says check it out.
Jeff Bob says check it out. This movie, at its worst, is like a perfect put it on in the background at a Halloween party and let the atmosphere it sets the atmosphere really well.
And some people at the party is going to venture over and probably say, what's this? And sit down and watch it.
Yeah. Agree. So I like it a lot. It kind of annoys me a little because I feel like there's more to squeeze out of it that would make it like perfection.
It misses its full potential.
Yes.
But what it manages to do is pretty great.
Yep.
And some of that full potential, I mean, quite honestly, is going to probably be they didn't have the money for the full potential.
Sure.
But what they did put out
probably not.
Had a lot going for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has a whole lot going for it.
Good stuff. I'm definitely glad I've seen this film and watched it a few times since, for sure.
Well, you know what? I'm glad that we were able to do it as a precursor for Spooky Month.
What?
Yeah, we got Spooky Month. Next week's October. It's Spooky Month here at Film Seizure. It's Spooky Month here at Film Seizure for Monster Mondays. It's Spooky Month not at Film Seizure, but at B-Movie Enema.
It'll be Spooky Month at my house.
It's going to be Spooky Month everywhere.
Yes.
Jason, what was the inspiration for this upcoming month's Spooky Month?
Well, I think it kind of came from the idea that we haven't covered 2 of my favorite horror films of all time, Alien and Return of the Living Dead. And then I was like, oh shit, Dan O'Bannon is connected to both of those movies. Why don't we just do a whole month of Dan O'Bannon? So that's what we're going to do. The whole month of Dan O'Bannon.
Hooray.
That sounds pretty fucking great.
Pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good time. I think it's going to be a good time had by all. We get things started next week with Alien.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a way to jump in right there. Sorry.
Boy, it sure is. Yeah. But it does have one of my favorite scares of any horror movie ever.
Mm-hmm. I know what you're talking about. It's not the one you think.
It's not the
one Jeff thinks.
It's not the one. It's not the one that our listeners might think.
Yep.
Yes, indeed.
Yep. So anyway, that is next Wednesday. Next Monday at Monster Mondays, I've got Evil Dead 2. Happening. So following up from last week, they did it again.
Between last week and this week, I watched Evil Dead.
Yeah.
For the first time, so I'm gonna have to check in because I'd never heard of it.
Never heard of it.
But now I need to watch Evil Dead 2 and see if they could do it better.
You know, we talk about those reimaginings and those remakes.
Yes.
With a little bit more money, what you can do. Yeah. So both of those. So next Wednesday, Alien. Next Monday, Evil Dead 2. Go to filmseizure.com. You can check it out there. You can also find us at Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and all of the places that you normally would find podcasts. This upcoming Friday at my website, bmovieenema.com, it is the close of Russ Meyer Month 2 with his final movie that he made that was not a mockumentary or a documentary of any kind. And it's also the last film that Roger Ebert wrote for him, which was Beneath the Valley of the Ultra Vixens. Pretty good.
Oh, he went back to that well? I didn't know that.
Yeah. He made 3 movies with Yeah, the two of them made 3 movies together. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. And we got some stuff to kind of wrap things up because it'll probably be a little while since I do another Russ Meyer movie. There's not that many more that I can really get anything out of as far as like doing articles and reviews for.
Right.
So probably going to be a little while before I do that. So I kind of wrap things up kind of nicely there, I think. So that is this upcoming Friday at bmovieenema.com. So so next week we go someplace where no one can hear ice cream. I'm Jeff Arbuckle.
I'm Chuck Moore.
I'm Jason Oliver, and you have been listening to Film Seizure.